NBA.com. This is John. This report is for the 3rd of August. And yes, we've begun new peace deal. Trump reached a peace deal with Saudi Arabia. And so market's excited about that. Nice little lift from it. And it's congruent. We've had magenta over yellow, and that has forced a short cover rally, as we typically see. We also had the orange dip below, which was a confirmation from the earlier one that had done that right back here, but it was just a brief moment, and we're still pretty weak from a shakeout standpoint, but it's improving regularly. So we should get to zero at about the time we're reaching new highs and be ready to break out for better ones. This confirms what we were talking about from a weekly chart, but this isn't a surprise. Now that we reached a peace deal with Saudi Arabia, who everyone thinks that was already our friend, but somehow that translates to Iran, though they really don't have anything to do with it other than the Saudis asked us not to bomb. So that was the breakthrough. So there you have it. Still weak though from an NQ standpoint, but same short cover rally setup configuration within that. Though we'll see a little bit of weakness here once the steel dips back down below 13, because once it's above plus 13, it's the same as it coming from below, which is a net positive. So it's like all of everything going in the same direction. Uh, DOC red, green, all of it pushing upward. So yeah, mm, nothing too dramatic from that standpoint. The big move, though, is like we talked about. Oil pops up, then you need to have peace. You have a little bit more conflict. You declare peace again, and you try and keep oil as contained as you can, given the fact there really isn't a whole lot of activity going through there. The real question then becomes, what does it mean from a global growth standpoint? How much has that changed, and whether or not there are alternative sources are filling the void, and is this ever even going to be needed at all? And if that's the case and supply is available, what happens if you do end up with some kind of arrangement? The amount of glut that would exist would be tremendous. So that's an interesting one, too. That would actually be the biggest driver of economic growth you could imagine. Um, why it hasn't happened, of course, well, Iran's counting down the days until the election, and the U.S. is trying to get it done before then. So you've got until what, September, October? Puts you right on the edge. It's not going to help you much if you wait till October to get oil prices down where the price at the pump is cheap. Just super excited for the euro because again, it fits within their war narrative, and that the U.S. is collapsing. So everyone jump into the euros. Um, Beyond that, it doesn't make any sense because the eurozone is a nightmare, and the fact that they're claiming the dollar is weak relative to the growth aspect of the U.S. currency, this was all just because the Fed didn't raise rates, and they were kind of upset at that. They were really hoping for a rate hike. Uh, eh, Deal with it. Like you're going to see a rate hike in the EU? No, because they can't. It's already people are at the edge. From a gold standpoint, nothing until you get CPI numbers that are starting to reflect some kind of move. And I think some of this has a lot to do with the immigration situation, at least in America, from that standpoint, by reducing the amount of demand. Uh, you've leveled out a degree at which companies can actually spike things, because it's a significant shift when you're not importing extra millions of people. Your demand for housing, all these other things drops dramatically, and given the supply you already had, yeah, it makes for reasonable reduction, which is softening of price situation. Bitcoin suffering a bit here. There was another theft from some old coins that were, had seeds that were done by this firmware and stuff. So I think that just adds to the whole, security threat. In this idea that someday quantum is going to overcome Bitcoin, that I just don't think that they understand how that works. But from an old address construct in that, but I mean, easily enough, you could just update yours to newer addresses and you'd be fine. So whatever. It's not really relevant to most of us from a 50K standpoint. So yeah, we had a nice move up on Friday. A little bit of a retrace partway through there, filled in. Well, it really wasn't any positive extreme to speak of per se, but you had a pretty strong separation. But at this point, when you have MBI weight below 10 in that, any retrace is just an opportunity to load up, and they basically just drove it up with gap up in the futures. Not too shocking. This is what it looks like from the European session, Asian session, and into the European session. Not a whole lot of anything. But the other day, it was pretty clean. Let's go back to the start of it. Because we had some modest runs up, down, and then we ended up with a pretty long short move there. That was pretty decent. Then another up in that. But you just keep counting all these. And then just after that, I was out. So it was not doing anything the rest of the day. But again, you just basically rode above the 76% pretty much the entire time until we came to the end of the day. And MBI White took the lead right there, and we just plummeted back and filled into the zero. And that's pretty much what that was. So all good. Nice way to start out the new month, and indicator readings on it are spot on. So no objections from that standpoint. Anything relevant, I'll put it on the team chat. But have a good one. Trade well.